Hi guys, chapter 28, macroeconomics. We are going to be talking about unemployment. Um, Basically, we're going to talk about how the government measures the economy's unemployment rate, problems that arise while they're interpreting the data for unemployment, and how long people are unemployed. What constitutes unemployment, the different attributes. Okay. Um, First of all, we ask, well, what is unemployment? This chapter is going to explain to us what it is. Just because somebody isn't working doesn't mean they're unemployed. For example, if a stay-at-home mom is not actively looking for a job, she is not considered unemployed. She's considered not in the workforce. We had actually a fun exercise that we would have done as a group if we were in school, a fun little activity that I had, but we'll get this done. Okay, so who tracks all this information? The Bureau of Labor and Statistics. They're the ones that measure the unemployment rate. It's not a perfect measure, just like every rate that we talk about in macroeconomics. None of the rates or the things that we measure in economics is perfect. It can't be perfect. Um, The reason it can't be perfect is, again, some people don't work but receive paychecks. So people that work illegally with illegal businesses, illegal immigrants, people that get paid cash off the books, so to speak, or under the table, you may have heard of that term. Because of all of those situations, the unemployment rate cannot be perfect. Okay. So when doing your classwork, you may have a little bit of difficulty with numbers 4, 9, and 11, trying to decipher which ones, what they're asking, because it sounds like they're asking similar things. But number 4 is actually asking what are the three categories that are identified that identify unemployment in the US, right? And that's what we're going to talk about now. See where it says identifying unemployment at the top? Okay, so we're talking about employed, unemployed, and not in the labor force. Okay, so that's number 4 in your classwork. Employed are those who work, people that get paid in their businesses. This is the majority of people. You can also be an unpaid worker as long as you're in a family business. So if you're working for your parents' deli and they don't pay you a paycheck, you're still considered employed because you're working for the family. You could be part-time, full-time, temporary, maybe even be out of work temporarily due to going on vacation, or maybe you just had a baby. Whatever the case, as long as you have a job to go back to, you're considered employed. Okay? Unemployed are all those people that want to work and can work but don't have a job. So they're available, they're willing and able, they just can't find a job. Maybe they were laid off. So if like a teacher gets laid off from their job because of budget restraints and they're not working, but they're hoping to get called back, they're still considered laid off, even though they haven't been called back yet. And then of course, people not in the labor force. I already mentioned if you're a stay-at-home mom. So there are certain people that are not in the labor force. And what that means is even though they're not working, they're not included in the unemployment rate because they're not actively seeking employment. Okay, they have no interest in working. So they're not considered unemployed. They're considered not in the labor force. Okay, so this would be full-time students, homemakers, people that have retired. Really, those are the main people. Okay, so what is the labor force? The labor force is, as you can see, it's the sum of employed and unemployed. So when we talk about the labor force, we're talking about our employed people, and then the people that are unemployed. This does not include the people that are not in the labor force. Okay, unemployment rate is the percentage at which we identify how many people are unemployed as a percentage. Same thing that we've talked about in macroeconomics this whole semester is they really measure everything as a ratio or a percentage. So you're basically going to take the number of unemployed people and divide it into the number of people that are in the labor force, and that'll give you your percentage. You guys won't have to calculate that, but it's just good that you're aware of how to calculate it. So the labor force participation rate, this measures the percentage of adult population in the labor force, right? So just adults. So it's going to be your labor force divided by the adult population, and this will tell us how many adults are working or able to be working. So, excuse me, you're here when we're still talking about identifying. Okay, this is in your classwork. This is where we start talking about number 9. Number 9 in your classwork asks, what are the 3 main categories used in the breakdown? I gave examples, men, women, teens, that can be unemployed. So this is it. The first one is going to be women of prime working age. So they take a look at women ages 25 to 54. They usually have lower rates than men in that same age group. Usually there's more men unemployed than there are women. Once in the labor force, men and women have similar unemployment rates. Okay, the second category that we look at is blacks of prime working age. They say that there's similar rates of the labor force participation as prime age of whites, but the unemployment rates are a little bit higher for blacks of prime working age. So it's the same amount in the workforce, just that they have a higher unemployment rate. And then teenagers is our third category, and they have lower rates in the labor force participation, because they're in school or, seeking employment, but they have much higher rates of unemployment than older workers because, a lot of times when there's layoffs, the last, most recent people hired are the first to go. Okay. This is just a little graph that I'd like you to look at for a second. This just kind of tells you the percentage of the labor force over here, and then the years. So we look at unemployment. You look at 1970, and then unemployment rose, went down, went up, right? This chart only goes to 2015 because the book company, I think, published in 2016, but you get the idea of how the unemployment rate, it is normal for it to go up and down. You remember when we talked about GDP, we talked about our last recession in 2008, and that's right here, right? This chart will be very interesting when we could put 2020 on there because of the unemployment rate right now is horrific. Probably one of the worst. It is one of the worst we've ever seen. It might even be the worst we've ever seen. We will actually have an assignment on that probably coming up because I think that you'll learn a lot from it. Okay. So now we're going to get into actually number 11 on your classwork that asks about the 3 types of unemployment. The 3 types of unemployment that we're going to discuss is cyclical, frictional, and structural. Okay, it's just important, that you realize that there's 3 different types of employment. In other words, 3 different categories as to how the unemployed fall into it, like why they're unemployed. These types explain the unemployment. First of all, it's important that you also know we have what's called the natural rate of unemployment, and that's used to monitor changes from year to year. With the natural rate of unemployment, it's just exactly what it's called, a natural rate of unemployment. There's always going to be a percentage of people unemployed. That's inevitable. Technology changes, jobs change, so people get laid off and new people get hired eventually. So then those people are laid off. You'll see as we go through the different types that it's unavoidable to have some sort of percentage. Before this pandemic happened, we had about 3% unemployment rate in the United States. It was the best it's been in decades. Okay, so cyclical unemployment is the first one that we're talking about. This one measures the amount of unemployment in an economy. It's the most common one. Okay, here we go. It's the official unemployment rate, so it's the one that they use most often when they're calculating. It's more than 1/3 of the unemployed labor force is because of cyclical unemployment. Okay, it's easy to recognize full-time workers, but to be able to distinguish between unemployed and not in the labor force is difficult. It can be hard to figure out if people are trying to look or not trying to look for a job. Okay, so some of those just might be out of the labor force for right now. They may want to work, but they just can't find jobs. Like they just can't find what they're looking for right now. This is just a little, I want you guys just to take a look at this. You can even look at it on your own. It's just to define what the Bureau of Labor Statistics says as what marginally attached workers are, discouraged workers, people that can't find a job, and then employed part-time. So how long are people unemployed and without work? Most spells of unemployment are short. Most unemployment is observed at any given time is long term. Most people who become unemployed will soon find jobs. Okay, we're going to talk about that more in a second. And we may have to have a second video here. I was hoping to get this done in 15 minutes, but I may have to do a second video. We said that one already, sorry. The unemployment rate never falls to zero. I mentioned that. It fluctuates at the natural rate. Okay, frictional unemployment. All right, so I mentioned that we have cyclical, frictional, and structural. Cyclical was the most common one that's used. The second one here is frictional. Frictional unemployment, this matches workers to jobs. This is where it takes time to find jobs that are best for the workers, right? So it's relatively short spells of unemployment. Structural usually takes a little bit longer. This is when there's not enough jobs available for people with specific skills. So the quality of the labor supplied, number of skilled workers exceeds the quantity of demand. So there's not enough, there's too many skilled workers. So like if you look at the cell phones, how that constantly changes, right? When cell phones first came out, they hired so many workers in order to put up the cell towers. Well, once that technology changed and they no longer had to put the cell towers up, all those workers got laid off. Those are skilled workers in a specific field that now don't have a job because the demand's not there for that job any longer. That's structural unemployment. That's out of their control. Frictional unemployment is in their control a little bit. Frictional is where they say, well, now I want to wait to find a job that fits me best. So I'm unemployed and I'm going to stay unemployed and collect unemployment until I can find something that best suits me. Okay? So the job search process, which millions of Americans and people around the world are going through that right now, this is the process where workers have to find the appropriate job that fits their skills and their taste, like what they like, okay, what they think would be best for them. I'm just trying to look at my notes here to see when I'm going to switch. The next video I'm going to do, guys, because we'll get cut off soon, is going to be quick, but quicker than this anyway. Okay, so job search. So some frictional unemployment's inevitable. I talked about that already. There could be a change in demand for different firms. The example I gave was for structural was the technology, right? So technology could change and people get laid off. But instead of taking the next job that comes available, they're gonna wait, and they're gonna wait for something in their interests that they do, right? Some frictional is unemployment. Things change, right? The economy's always changing. These are just some statistics for you and how the unemployment rates changed. Public policy and job search. This is where the government steps in, like they're doing right now. Right now, they're giving people that signed up for unemployment, they actually get an extra $600 because of the situation. They usually offer training and they help with not job placement, but opportunities for interviews and maybe placement in temporary positions and temp jobs. So this is where the government gets involved and they will set policy to help. Okay, guys, we're going to end here, and I'm going to pick up the next video on this slide because it's going to just cut me off here any second.